There's only real two reasons problems exist. One, we don't have the information we need to solve the problem, right? So you might say, well, I need a new course, or I need to read a new book. Or two, there's something getting in the way. There's an imbalance, right? Which is stopping us from actually doing it. Those are the only two reasons problems remain and exist. So if we've got all the information we need, the programs, the courses, etc., then surely it's just a matter of perspective that needs shifting in order for us to execute.
Hello, my loves, and welcome back to Create Your Life. I am your host, Simone Leah. So I just wanted to let you guys know that today's interview is actually an interview that I recorded about a year ago when I ran an online event called the Soul-Led Entrepreneurs Summit. It was a really wonderful event. I had some beautiful, amazing speakers talking about things like connecting with your intuition and how you can use that in your business, how to do Facebook advertising, how to do marketing as a soul-led entrepreneur, all of these cool things to do with business, entrepreneurship, and actually also spirituality and connecting within. And so these interviews were so wonderful that I really wanted to be able to share them with you now. So if when you're watching this, you see or hear the word Soul-Led Entrepreneurs, this is still the Create Your Life show, but these interviews were just too good for me to keep to myself any longer. So I really hope you guys enjoy this interview, and I can't wait to connect with you again soon. Hey guys, welcome back to Soul-Led Entrepreneurs. My name is Simone and I'm your host today. Today I had the absolute pleasure of interviewing Jay Williams from Jay Williams Coaching, and we had an amazing chat about controlling your mind instead of your mind controlling you, and what it might actually look like to start to work through some of those things that are holding you back. Hey guys, and welcome back to Soul-Led Entrepreneurs. My name is Simone and I'm here with Jay Williams from Jay Williams Coaching today. How are you, Jay?
Yeah, I'm doing absolutely great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you today because we're going to have a great chat about controlling your mind instead of your mind actually controlling you, which is so prevalent to a lot of business owners. But I would love to start with the question of, what does being soul-aligned in business mean to you?
So what does soul-aligned in business mean to you? So I've got to be honest, I struggled for many years. I'm really starting to understand myself, understanding what it was that lit me up, what it was, this whole values thing, this purpose thing that everybody's talking about. And I got really frustrated because everyone's like, you need to find your purpose. You need to do something you love, do something you're passionate about. And for me, this was a real challenge, but a challenge that was really something that took me down a path of trial and error. And for me, I tried many different things before I came to be a coach, and I really started to pay attention to the clues that people were giving me. Like, people would say, oh, you're pretty good at this. And what really I tended to flow towards, rather than I just know, I'm born with it. And I just know instinctively what to do. And so I went through this process of trial and error. And what does it mean to be aligned in that way? Well, it really means to do something that just feels right for you. I think that when you're doing what you most enjoy, it seems to flow and it seems to be easier. Now, I don't say that to say that everything I do is easy, because it's certainly not. But I do say that there are components of everything I do that are fulfilling, and I can feel like it's pulling me rather than feel like I'm constantly having to push myself to actually do it. So if I was going to answer that question, that's what I'd say.
No, I love that. I totally love that. It is when you get into that flow state that things start to kind of go with ease. So yeah, totally, definitely agree with that. Now, with controlling your mind instead of your mind controlling you, what sort of stuff comes up for people in your experience as a coach, where people's mind is taking control of their business and their decisions?
If we think about business as like a vehicle, a business on its own has some kind of purpose. It's a series of processes, offers, pricing, fulfillment, structure, and all that kind of stuff. But then we have the person, right? The person influencing the person running the business. And one of the most common things I see is that people tend to invest in strategy, tactics, components of the vehicle, trying to fix the vehicle. And that makes a lot of sense. You've got to have a Ferrari if you're going to achieve the results that you really want for yourself. So it makes sense to invest in the vehicle, in the next course or program or seminar from the latest guru to help you actually achieve what you want to. But the problem comes when you've got a fantastic vehicle, but the driver of the vehicle isn't a Ferrari driver. They're more of a Ford driver than a Ferrari. And so what happens is, I like to say that you are not your business. Like, your business is the vehicle, you're the driver of your vehicle. And most people, what they tend to do is spend a lot of time on their business, but spend little time working on themselves. And I think the reason for this is because it's easier to think that it's something wrong with the tools. It's easier to think there's something wrong with the business than to take a long, hard look at ourselves. And I like the saying, a bad tradesman always blames his tools or her tools. And what tends to come up for people, and there's common blocks, if you like, that we actually see with regards to this. Everybody will have heard about procrastination. And we have our adrenaline junkies out there, the people who just leave it till last minute till they absolutely must. And this often causes stress and frustration. And sometimes they don't do a good job. We get people who go into a state of overwhelm and just helplessness. And there's different stages of procrastination, but then you have things like show up like self-doubt. Gallup strengths tests actually found that they have a score of 1 to 34. And you basically take the test and you discover what your biggest strengths are, and you say your least biggest strengths are. And 34 is the lowest score you can possibly have. And what they actually found was that on average, across all of the people they'd taken through these tests around the world, in women, self-assurance was 34 out of 34. In men, self-assurance was 32 out of 34, which tells me that we have a big problem with confidence in this world. Yeah. People aren't that very confident. So we experience a lot of self-doubt, imposter syndrome. So we've got procrastination, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. Then we have things like fear of failure, fear of success, but people tend not to get down to the nitty-gritty there. They tend to say, oh, I've got this fear of failure, I've got this fear of success. But what is the consequence of failing? What is the consequence of success? See, I think that the way the mind works, it fluffs things up so that we don't have to get to the real pain. And it could be something like, okay, well, if I fail or I do something and I mess it up, then people are going to laugh at me, humiliate me, which is a common one. I'm going to feel ridiculed and I'm going to experience the shame that comes with that. And then you ask yourself again, well, what if that happens? And eventually it always leads to death, or life isn't worth living, or what's the point in trying, which is essentially what the mind's trying to do. It's trying to keep you alive. So it's naturally going to create these feelings inside of you in order to stop you doing behaviors that might pose some kind of risk to your survival. And this is just because the human brain is millions of years old and it's not equipped to deal with what we face in our modern day life. So those are just a few of them that come up. People being distracted, lacking focus, going on what I like to call the emotional roller coaster, which is where 1 minute you're winning in business, next minute it's going horribly wrong, next minute you're up, next minute you're down. And that normally shows up in the form of inconsistent income, inconsistent action taking, like waiting for motivation, waiting until I feel like it. And those are just some of the challenges people face when they're trying to drive the vehicle and failing miserably.
I absolutely love that because there's so many little things there that you would literally just be like, not realize that's something you can fix, if that makes sense. Like if you're a big procrastinator, you've probably procrastinated for your whole life or potentially at certain times of your life. So you're probably like, that's just part of who I am. I can't change that. You know what I mean? So I actually love that you've actually brought up things that a lot of people would be like, I have that. I can work through that, and like really allow people to know that some of these things, if you're not getting the results you want, take a look at your everyday behaviors as opposed to something that's like really bright and shiny and in your face that like might have happened. It could just be those little tweaks of those little 1% or 2% of things like, I don't feel, I procrastinate a lot, or, like all those little things that you mentioned that are, a lot of people would just say they're just a part of everyday life. So
Yeah.
how would someone know if this is something that is going to be like something that dates back, or something that's just a temporary, I'm not feeling motivated at the moment, it's only been a month? If someone does feel, say, like for a month or so that their behavior has been unmotivated, is that enough for them to come and see someone and make that shift through? Or is there like a time where if it's only been a little bit of time, you should just leave it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so great question. I think we all have down days. I think that's just a natural part of life. It would be naive of me to say that everybody can always perform at their best all of the time. It's just simply not sustainable. And it also doesn't follow the universal law of rhythm. So if you think about a pendulum will swing as far to the left as it does to the right. And naturally, whenever we experience some kind of high, we've got to expect there's probably going to be some kind of low in equal proportion. Now, as long as our highs eventually become higher than our lows, then we progress in life. But so I think it's important to say that, like, we are always going to have contrasting experiences, and we're always going to end up on the pendulum. It's just part of life. The only difference is how big is the pendulum swing for you? Because I know where I operate now. I used to operate from one extreme pole to the next, where everything was amazing, and then it was really sad. And everything was amazing, and it was really sad. And so you can kind of start to get a gauge on where you are emotionally by how big the pendulum swings are. So for me now, I operate very much from a place of center. Like, I'm very grounded and not much throws me at all, really. That's not to say I don't have problems. That's not to say I don't get angry every now, or I doubt myself every now and then. I do. But the difference is I'm just off the line. I'm just off the center. I'm not on these massive pendulum swings. So I think it really comes from a place of understanding yourself. How do you do on the pendulum? Really? What's the emotional roller coaster you're on? And I think that the other thing that we need to look at is, like, has something changed in your life? Has something like triggered this shift? Are you normally pretty good and then something's happened and that's created this for you, or not? Because I know plenty of people have been to me and they've had failed business partnerships in the past, or failed businesses, and that's had a profound impact on them in their past. And so that can severely limit them from being able to make a decision. It keeps them procrastinating. It keeps them like fearing, what might happen? What if I make the wrong decision? Then I'll lose my business. Or what if it gets out of control because someone's taken something from them in the past? And so it's a really challenging question, but really I'd say that we need to understand ourselves, where we are on the pendulum. But also, I think it's important to say that we all have shit. We all have stuff from our past. And if we are being triggered in the present, so if you're being triggered, that's a sign that you have something in your past that is unresolved. And the more you can clear of that, the smaller the swing will be on the pendulum. And that would kind of be my gauge. It's really about how big is the swing on the pendulum. If it's just a week and that's normal for you, fine. If it's a month and that's really not normal for you, then you probably need to have a conversation or take a long, hard look at why this might be coming up for you.
Yeah. And it can, like, as you said, come down to just external external things that are going on in your actual life. You know, it doesn't take much to throw something out of kilter, but if you can stay in that balance and alignment that you have within yourself, that's also going to help with the pendulum as well. So is this sort of thing, like if something was to come up like that, do you believe that someone can work through some of those things on their own? Or do you think that it's a process that always needs to happen with someone else, or that it's a process that can go either way?
Yeah, it's certainly a process that can go either way. I think, honestly, depending on who you are as a person and your level of awareness, a lot of people can self-coach. They don't always need to hire a coach or a mentor or a therapist to actually help them work through stuff. Like, I know that I'm really good at working through my own stuff now, but there are times where I have blind spots. There's times where I can't see my own blind spots, and that's when I might look for some kind of coach. But yeah, you can work through things on your own. But like I always like to say, it isn't actually my quote, it's from Les Brown. You can't always see the picture when you're in the frame. And that's the time when I'd hire a coach, because if I'm missing something, I need someone who can see from outside to be objective to help me move forward. And that's when I'd look to hire a coach.
Especially as well, I think if things are going fine in your world and the business is going fine, but nothing's changing, like you're not where you want to be, nothing's really shifting either way. I think that's also a really great time to get a coach as well, to get you to that next level, because at that point, it's not like you as a person can pinpoint what is going on. So you kind of probably do need that external person to be able to come in and help you spot what's going on. Because do you find that a lot of people will come in and on the outside it doesn't look like anything's actually moving, if that makes sense?
In terms of moving, are you referring to like everything's kind of just ticking over, and like they might be, I don't know, doing another course or reading another book and it's just not shifting, they're not able to take it to the next level? Is that what you mean by that?
Yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, so again, like I think that the more work you do on yourself and the higher you go in the process of especially in business, like I find that in particular when you're just starting out in business, is very focused on like the mindset component, especially in those early stages. I find that as you grow, like some of my clients, like 7-figure earners, it's quite small and it's quite subtle, the shift. And so when you need to dig in and you need to find out what it is. And then when you find it and shift it, it's like instant. They just go. They just fly at that point. And I'm guessing based on the question, you'd either experienced it yourself or you'd seen it yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, definitely. It definitely comes up. And so I would like to know as well is, do you notice a difference in the process with someone who's, say, earning 7 figures as opposed to someone who's earning only lower 6 figures? Is there an actual difference in the process itself? Because I know you said that you have to dig in a lot deeper. Or is it the same process, but just with a little bit more exploration, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it's the same process. I mean, human beings, even though there's, I think it's what, 8 billion of us on the planet, something like that, we're not too different. I see the same patterns over and over and over and over again. And the fundamental process to actually figuring out what's really going on, it is the same. Like at some point, there's been some kind of event that's happened in your life where you've created a negative association that's made you feel a certain way. And then you've made a decision at that point about how you see the world. In other words, you've put some kind of lens on, and by seeing the world through that lens, that's what's creating the feeling. It's what's creating the results that you're getting, or not getting the results that you're getting in your life and in your business. So really the process is the same. And it really comes down to what event in your past, or what series of event led to you making a decision about how you view the world.
I literally love that. I totally agree with that. I call them filters. I always just call them little filters instead of lenses. So for someone who is new to the whole mindset game, they've had a business, they've always been very focused on the actual doing as opposed to the internal work. Is the actual act of going in and working through and finding those little things that happened in the past, is that scary and confronting, or is that something that's actually quite easy to work through? Because whenever you say to someone, do the work, sometimes they kind of freak out and they're like, oh no. So what's your opinion on actually doing that sort of work?
It's definitely a loaded question.
Isn't it?
I like to give an honest perspective here. It's not easy. There's going to be emotion. You're going to feel naked at times. And there are sometimes going to be conversations which you might not want to have. They're going to be things you might not want to revisit. And I think it's important to express that coaching in itself is a future, is present to future base. So it's about how do we move you forward? And I just need to make this distinction really clear, because in coaching, we go back to get a frame on how you came to be where you are now, so we can move you forward. Whereas something which might resemble more therapy based, we might go back into the past a lot and talk about that stuff. In coaching, we only go back once or twice to identify the event so we can move you forward. Now, just bringing it back to this doing the work, which is such a ambiguous term. It doesn't give you specifics, which leaves people like, what the hell is the work? It really requires you to take the time to reflect, introspect, and actually create a lot of shifts within yourself. It's hard to actually say there's one size fits all, because I don't believe there is. And for some people, they will come to me and everything is so clear. They know the pain. They know like the 20% that's causing 80% of the problems in their life. They know what they are. And then it's a process of just reframing them and shifting them, and we're able to set them on their way. But for some people, they've spent so much of their life suppressing their memories, suppressing their emotions, that actually it's a lot harder process, because you actually need to help them to feel again, because some people are dead inside. And so that's a slightly longer process, and it's very different for different people. But it isn't easy. It does take time, it does take patience, and it does take you to be willing to go there and be uncomfortable, because a lot of it, like having a conversation with my dad about my parents' divorce and how I was 3, I made it mean that he abandoned me and he left me and I was broken and I wasn't enough. That's kind of going to break his heart if you're coming in it from the wrong place. If I'm a victim of my past, then that conversation is going to be very difficult. But if I see that as something that happened for me not to me, then I can be grateful and I can come at that conversation in a very different way. So depending on who you're working with and depending on how you're able to navigate things like conversations like that will determine how rough a ride you're actually going to have with it.
But I think it's like it can be rough, but I feel like it's also something that when you do it, it becomes like exercise or running. Like it does get easier over time as you get used to it. But there's always going to be those times, I feel like, where you are going to have like the really emotional, that one just got me in the gut. But at the same time, sometimes like it's been like, I don't know how often people come and see, but I know in my own personal experience, sometimes I can go 4 or 5 sessions with someone when I'm working with someone, because I also do work with someone who like, does this sort of stuff for me. And I can go 4 or 5 sessions and I'm fine. And then we can have one session that just unlocks something that just goes boom. So it's always going to change and evolve, but it essentially does get easier and become less scary, I think.
And I think it's important to say as well, it's massively rewarding.
Yeah.
Like it really is. Like I was working with one of my clients the other day and I literally recorded him. He laughed for 6 minutes. Like we did an intervention and he was laughing hysterically for 6 minutes. And he told me all that week, like he was just randomly laughing. And like for him, what we let go of was something he'd been holding on to for like 28 years. And all of that laughing was just the release of it all, because he'd been holding on to it and he'd become trapped in his body and he was just letting it go. And the laughter was just that releasing of the energy. And I think it's important to say this as well, that not to get too woo-woo or too into the energy side of it, but just understand that your body knows what you need. And I had an experience with my dad where I was at my granddad's funeral. And at my granddad's funeral, my dad is this hard up guy, doesn't show his feelings, never cries. And he turned around to me, we stood in the kitchen, he turned around to me, and my first name is James, but everyone calls me Jay. And he said, James, I'm worried about today. What are you worried about? I'm worried I might cry and make an idiot of myself. And I turned around to him and just laughed, like scoffed at him. And I was just like, Dad, no one's going to laugh at you. It's your dad's funeral. I said, and you've also got to understand that the reason we cry is it's your body's natural way of helping you to heal. And the body knows what we need, whether it be crying, whether it be laughter. I had a client the other day I was working with, and we did an intervention similar to the guy who was laughing, and she felt severely sick. Like she was like, I need to vomit. And it was her body's way of getting rid of all of the stuff that she'd been holding on to. So it can come out in many different ways. And that can be really, is the word cathartic? Is that how we pronounce it? Cathartic? Mm-hmm. And this release can be really powerful. That's why when most people walk away from an experience like this, they feel like they've got more energy. They feel more alive because it's no longer weighing down on their body and their mind, taking up space, taking up their valuable energy.
Yeah. No, I literally love that. So if someone is a business owner and they're wanting to move through some stuff and go through this sort of experience, would you recommend that they do this on a regular basis? Like say like a chiropractor, you go once a month or whatever, or would you say that it is something that they just do when they feel they need to? Because like it is such a good opportunity for you to just release and get stuff out in a safe environment. So
yeah, I think there's two sides to this. I think you can become addicted to it. It is a very addictive process because you're getting that dopamine hit. And I think for me personally, I too was addicted to the industry to a point. And so I would constantly be going, hey, I need to do more breath work and I need to hire more coaches. I need to go to Tony Robbins. and jump up and down again and again and again and again. And for anyone who's ever been to a Tony Robbins event, you go to the event and people come up to you or speak to you and they're like, hey, is this your first event? And you'll be like, yeah, it's my first event. And they'll be like, this is number 8. And you're like, well, what the are you doing here still? Clearly something isn't working. But the truth is they're addicted to the high. They're addicted to the release. And so I think it's important that you reach a point like I did where you actually can say, actually, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not actually broken as I might have thought I was. And the only reason I keep attending these events over and over because I enjoy the high. Well, what if I just focus on getting on with the work? That would be the first thing that I'd say. What if I actually focus on execution rather than just releasing? Because it's easy to get caught in that camp. And then the second thing is, I just believe that everybody should have a coach of some kind, or someone like you mentioned, a chiropractor, that they should regularly engage with, because life comes at you pretty fast and there's always problems. And I like to say to people, have you ever had a time, and I'll ask you, Simone, have you ever had a time where you haven't had a problem?
Oh, no, never. Yeah, there's
Never.
always something going
exist. on. So whether it's the dishwasher needs filling or I need to pay someone, like it always happens, right? We've always got problems. And so if you have someone available to help work through those challenges, it's going to be a much smoother ride than perhaps trying to go it alone, which as a guy, I know particularly in men, there's often that belief of I need to do it on my own. But honestly, it couldn't be further from the truth if you're going to create what you really want to create for yourself. Like work with people, collaborate, and get the support you need. Otherwise, you'll stay stuck for a long bloody time. I can talk from experience.
I actually love that because I am a little bit different to normal people. And I've actually had people in my life supporting me, paid people, since I was about 19 years old. And for a lot of my 20s, I actually thought the fact that I needed that external help, I actually thought that meant that there was something wrong with me because I couldn't do it on my own. So I actually love that you're saying this and giving everybody in the audience permission to just go, you know what? I will be the best version of myself if I have that support. So I literally love that. And I thank you so much for that, because I think that so many people, and as you said, males as well, they do kind of feel like, no, I should be able to do this on my own. And the reality is that you are going to be the best version of yourself with support, I think.
And I just want to jump in here, Simone, because I actually don't like this whole best version of yourself, like you need to get to somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
I actually believe we are all already the best version of ourselves. Like we all have the resources and the resourcefulness that we need, right? We do. It's just that quite often we're not doing the things that you might say are what the best version of ourselves would be doing. And so I come from this place of none of us are broken, none of us need fixing. We just maybe have some imbalance in our mind, in our body, which if we were to just shift, because we all have blind spots, then we'd find ourselves at more of a place of balance, which is why I give the example of the pendulum swing. When you accept that I do not need fixing, I'm not broken, I do not need to read 10,000 books to fix myself and educate myself on how I work. Nothing against reading, I love reading, but we can actually say, hey, I'm everything I need. There's something quite humbling in that. It gives you a level of confidence that actually, I don't need anyone else or anything else to be okay to do this. Because I'm sure, Simone, if I was to ask you about a challenge you might face, I could probably ask you to name probably 10 to 20 times in your past where you've faced either that exact or something similar and overcome it. but it's only our perspective of that particular one that is creating the imbalance. Like, you already have everything you need. You've done it time and time and time again. And so I'm a big believer in not this becoming the best version of you, because you already are that. It's just about how do we align ourselves and balance ourselves in a way so we're doing the things that are a representation of what you're truly capable of.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I thank you for picking up my wording there, because I always like to say that we're perfectly perfect exactly where we're at. More what I was getting along the lines of, when you have that support there, it does help you to stay in that alignment. You know what I mean? So definitely totally agree with that. And it's so interesting for me to just pick up on little things that I say without even realizing. But yeah, I definitely do think that everyone has everything they need inside of them. But sometimes you kind of just need that reminder that you can do it, because you can, you know? So I do definitely 100% agree that we all have everything we need, and in every moment. It's not like you need to read the next book.
I was going to say, there's only real two reasons problems exist. One, we don't have the information we need to solve the problem, right? So you might say, well, I need a new course, or I need to read a new book. Or two, there's something getting in the way. There's an imbalance, right? Which is stopping us from actually doing it. Those are the only two reasons problems remain and exist. So if we've got all the information we need, the programs, the courses, etc., then surely it's just a matter of perspective that needs shifting in order for us to execute. It's like, how many people do you speak to? And I've been guilty of it in the past. I'm not going to say I don't. Read a book, or they'll go on social media and they'll be like, hey, I've read all these books. And it's like, well, how many of you actually executed and implemented into your life?
Yeah. Totally
Exactly.
agree. I used to set myself a challenge of reading one book a week. And then someone, I don't remember who, said something along the lines of, if you only read one book a year, but you take that book on, that's better than reading 30 and not actually like paying any real attention to any of it or implementing any of it, you know? So yeah, totally agree. Totally agree with that. So if someone was wanting to start on this, just this journey of getting control back over their own mind and moving forward in their life, what are 3 top tips that you would kind of share with them to help them get forward or move forward?
Yeah, so the first thing that we need to do is some kind of audit, I believe. Like, I like to think of the results that you're getting as some kind of feedback, right? If you just see it as feedback, everything is feedback. There's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. There's just feedback. Like, what you're getting, what's showing up in your life is just feedback. And that should be telling you everything you need to know about what you're doing, how you're being, because ultimately that's what's creating the results. So I think that the first thing we really need to do is get some self-awareness and do some kind of audit around, okay, what are the results? What are the results we're creating? What are the actions that I'm taking that are leading to those results? And are those actions, are they positive or negative, right? You could put positive, negative, and neutral, but chances are, if you're not getting the results, it's probably because you there's something that you're doing that isn't working. Now, this is either going to be, again, I alluded to the problem, you're either executing on the wrong strategy or the wrong tactics, you don't maybe have a plan, or there's something about the way you're being which is leading you to show up in that way. It's like, if I am not a very confident person and I'm trying to execute a video strategy and I'm on video and I'm like, hey, come and buy my product. It's going to change your life. You're probably not going to be convinced it's going to change your life. So we need to look at the components of like, what is it? What are the results I'm getting? And what is it I'm doing? And is it something that I'm doing that needs work, i.e. I need to gather more information? Or is it something to do with the way I'm being, i.e. I lack confidence, I'm doubting myself, I'm self-sabotaging, I'm procrastinating, I'm unfocused, which is ultimately leading to those results. And I think that's the first place that I would really start. Some kind of audit or awareness of actually what you're doing. You might call it a habit scorecard, as James Clear would talk about in his book, Atomic Habits, where you write down all of your habits and you give them a positive, a neutral, or a negative. And then you'll be able to see why you're getting the results that you really want. But that's my version of it. And then in terms of like the second thing that I would look to do is anytime you're triggered by something, I would just simply ask the question, where in my past does this feel familiar? Because that's going to give you an indicator as to what events of your past are still unresolved, that still need processing and reframing and integrating. Because if you feel it in the present, it's because of something in your past. Your life is a perfect mirror. If you ended a bad relationship, and let's just say you ended on bad terms, and your partner drove down the street, let's call it in a red Mercedes, and then one day you were walking down the street 20 years later, and you see a red Mercedes, which looks just like your ex-partner's. And then all of a sudden you instantly feel like discomfort. Oh no, it's them. And oh my God. And it's like, it's unresolved. Like there's clearly something that's unresolved there. So that would be a good indicator as to maybe there's something you need to go and have a look at, because some belief that that is driving you to feel that way. And then the third thing I'd probably look at is, question. So awareness, what are the events that's coming up? And then I would probably start asking yourself questions like, if I feel this way, so if I'm feeling this way, what is it I believe I need to believe in order to feel this way? Because if I'm feeling guilty, for example, about something, then I probably feel like I've done something wrong. If I feel shame, I probably feel like I am wrong, or there's something wrong with me, or I'm bad. It reminds me maybe of when you were a boy or a girl growing up and someone said, you've been a bad boy or a bad girl. You felt like instant shame. Now, some shame is healthy, believe it or not. But some shame is obviously very toxic and can lead you to believing that there's something wrong with you, you're broken, which is why I alluded to the addictive behaviors of people going and reading books and going to events over and over and over again. Because as I said, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. There's just an imbalanced perspective, and that's what's creating your behaviors. That's what's making you feel a certain way. And that's what's creating the results that you're getting in your business and your life.
Yeah. I love that. They are three amazing tips. And I literally even love that third tip, because it's not one that I've really heard talked about like that. But yeah, to actually go and have a look at, okay, well, why am I feeling this way? And have a look at it that way, I think is a really, really, really great tip. What about a recommended resource if someone was wanting to start working on their mindset?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that we're all traumatized. And that's why I say that we all have shit. And there's a great book called The Body Keeps a Score by Bessel van der Kolk. And it really digs into trauma and what's really going on in the mind. And typically people talk about trauma and they think that it's maybe some kind of abuse or something really bad and negative that's happened to people. And it's all about relativity. There's the law of relativity. It's only relative when it's compared to something else. So people say, oh, well, didn't experience domestic violence as a kid. My dad used to slap me across the back of the ass, so it wasn't that bad, so it can't be a big deal. But the truth is, as an egocentric child who makes everything about themselves, that might have been a real big deal for you. And that might have been something that shaped you in what you might perceive, not what I perceive would be a negative way, and might make you avoid some kind of conflict, which can show up in terms of avoiding difficult conversations. You know, if you're in business, fear of rejection, that kind of thing might show up. And so The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk is a really great book, which I absolutely love. It's a long one, but it'll give you a deep understanding of trauma and how really we all have it. We have hundreds of these events of our past, from the kid who didn't give you a sweet, but give your other friend a sweet in the playground, or the kid that didn't want to play with you, or the alcoholic mother or father, or the divorced parents, or whatever it was. Like, we all have shit. And the sooner we can go back and deal with that and reprocess it, the sooner we can come to this place of like centered balance. And that's a great book, which I'd recommend.
Totally love that and totally agree with that. And I was even just thinking that something we haven't really mentioned is, so say someone is obviously that little bit older, because obviously they're running a business. So they've already lived about 20 years minimum, but probably closer to 30 or 40. So if they are going to be doing that work and going backwards, I think you and I both know this, but it would be nice to share with the audience. Is it better to go back to the most recent time that sort of thing came up, or is it better to go back to the earliest time that sort of thing came up?
The further back you can go, the better. But often people can't always remember those memories. So I always get them to go into the latest memory and pace backwards. So put yourself in that state, that feeling, and then ask yourself the question, is this the earliest memory of me feeling like this? And then it's highly likely your unconscious will present an earlier memory.
Beautiful. I definitely love that, because I feel like that's really good for people to know. Anyway, thank you so much. This has been so fun. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so if people want to connect with me, they can go over to jwilliamscoaching.com, or they can go to Facebook and they can go to my Facebook group, which is 6-Figure Mindset Secrets for Entrepreneurs. So I'll provide you with the links if you want them. But yeah, they can go join my group there. It's a free group for them to join, where we have weekly Q&As, where we do like some hot seat coaching and things like that. And they can feel free to join.
Amazing. I definitely will link to that. So that will be amazing. So everyone needs to go into that group, because I can already tell that they will just get so much value out of it, because even just this conversation has had so much value. So yeah, thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been super fun. Loved it.